viewers, welcome to this episode of Expert Speaks. We have completed Q2 of this year 2024. This is time to look at what's happening in the Indian stock markets, what are its threats and what are the opportunities as observed by the professionals. In this episode, Expert of the Week, Fund Manager Harini Dedia is going to take you through what she observed both in the Indian market as well as in the global market. This is NRI Money Clinic for you and I am Dr. Chandrakant Bhatt, your financial guide for a happy living.
NRI Money Clinic. No hype, just the right advice.
Expert of the week today is Fund Manager Harini Dedia. She has appeared on our channel multiple number of times. She is a young fund manager making waves in the Indian fund management industry. She started her career way back from New York working for an hedge fund. Later on shifted to India. Currently she is working with Tamohara Investment Managers as its head of equity and a fund manager. The funds managed by her have got good ratings both in CRISIL as well as the PMS Bazaar. It's time to see what Harini Dedia is saying in the Indian market, both its threats and opportunities. It's over to you, Harini Dedia, to take you through what is that you are observing during the last quarter.
Good evening, Dr. Bhatt, and thank you so much for having me over yet again. It's a great time to be talking to you because I think this is really the time when one is wondering, including fund managers ourselves, right? We're wondering, how does one navigate markets like these? We've had a phenomenal run in India, especially. Where do we see opportunities? Do we still continue investing in equities? How do we really navigate through these times? And to that end, I think I'll be spending a little more time at the end sort of discussing these opportunities and both the fundamental reasons and sort of the reasons basis liquidity or any other technical indicators that sort of shed light on how one can really position themselves today. So without further ado, we will start off with our usual discussion on macros around the world and then we will get into the sector specifically. So from the last time we've spoken, what has happened is that US markets have been more or less quiet, especially the non-tech side. The small cap side in the US has had a terribly flat year. Terribly flat because, you see these top 6-7 companies just continue to do what they're doing and, continue their rise, and anything and everything below is just sort of struggling. 60% of the S&P 500 move can be really attributed to just 5 stocks today, this year. So that's where, that there is that dichotomy of, while the index looks okay, and if you've had any of these 6 stocks in your portfolio, you've done well in the US, but the rest of the broader markets have really started to struggle and people have started getting frustrated over there, right? So if you even see the Dow Jones performance, it's actually below for the quarter versus where we were last time around. And the story in S&P 500 is different because of the tech companies sort of, leading charge over there. What has happened is, our narrative that we had spoken about last time that, rates, contrary to expectations are sort of inching a bit upwards. That has held true. We've seen, in fact, especially in the last week of June, we saw rates across the board in the developed markets, be it Western Europe, US, even in places like Australia, we saw the 10-year yields across the board sort of inch up. And that's been a phenomena that's here to stay. And that combined with gold sort of doing extremely well, raises the question that, is there something else that we don't understand? How do we really position ourselves in equity markets where you see 10-year yields sort of inching up in a coordinated manner, you see gold going up? How do you really position yourself in the equity markets and specifically in the Indian equity markets? Because that has been our area of focus. And the one thing I would like to highlight over here is, while we've had a stupendous run and we do have a problem in valuations in a lot of pockets of the market, especially in the smaller and mid-cap companies, we definitely do not have a balance sheet problem in India today, right? The government balance sheet is very strong. Our forex reserves are very, very strong. The rupee has more or less been where it has been for the last year or so. We've not seen any volatility in corporate balance sheet. In fact, coming into this entire run that we've enjoyed for the last 3 odd years post-COVID, we've seen all the major problem areas in terms of leverage in the Indian market sort of solving for themselves, right? We had the telecom sector, which was in problem. One of the leading players over there was, sort of priced for solvency risk. That company has now been able to raise money, pay off its debt, pay off its dues, and has been able to take tariff hikes. So there is no longer a solvency risk in the telecom sector. We had issues in the steel sector, which got corrected with the first move in commodities post-COVID. Banking, of course, got cleaned up before going into COVID itself. So be it PSU banks, NBFCs, real estate, telecom, steel, all the usual culprits who really lever up their balance sheets and create a mess of the corporate balance sheets in India. All of them have done really, really well. And really, the balance sheet has been very strong. There's a lot of scope for leverage that is left on the Indian corporate balance sheet. In pockets, the only worry, if one has to be worried on the leverage front in India, is going to be on the household side, specifically on the rural household side or the semi-urban household side. The reason we say that is because incomes over there have struggled. We've had 2 bad monsoons. Hopefully this year it's going to be much better. And I have the privilege of staying in Bombay, which gets magical during the rains. So by the looks of it, it is going to be much better this year. But when monsoons are bad, of course, the rural economy takes a hit. And we've seen unsecured lending in personal loan category really crank up significantly. If you really go through the earnings of any of the major banks in India, you see a lot of their growth being led by this unsecured lending, specifically in the personal loan category. Perhaps people are using it for some sort of consumption. My worry is that they're using it to participate in the markets through the derivatives route, which could be a problem. And the government could take a view on that, because this is middle class savings getting caught up in the F&O and derivative activities, which the government may not view favorably. So that could be a problem area. However, the RBI has been very proactive, and for the last 6 months, they've been shoring up banks, NBFCs alike, to really crank down growth over here. They're very, very clear that anybody growing their unsecured book, they have to bring it down significantly. The statutory requirements over here have gone up significantly for the financial institutions. So on the macro front, if I had to be concerned in India, perhaps that could be one small part of the pie that could sort of raise some concerns. But overall, leverage is not a problem in India. Earnings are not a problem in India. Valuations, yes, in pockets are a problem, and there is no running away from that. So with that being said, it's really important to understand that, when earnings keep coming through and valuations are a problem, you typically see time corrections. You don't really see price corrections in those cases, right? Case in point being a company like Walmart. In 1999, Y2K moment, millennials are going to consume like never before. These are the kind of stories that were coming out of the tech boom. So apart from the dot-com companies that went bust, let's talk about a real business like Walmart that continued to flourish. And from 1999 to 2008, the stock price returns were zero, barring the dividends that the company gave out. But it was only because the earnings sustained. So my earnings went 4x, and therefore my PE came down significantly. So I was trading at a 40 multiple for a retail consumer business in the US in 1999. And while the valuations were a problem, the stock price didn't take a beating or a hammering even in the meltdown of 2000 or anything like that, right? Because the earnings were constantly coming through. So at this point around, that's the number one thing to remember, that even, let's say, if you feel that some of the companies you are positioned in or you're equity holder in, they are expensive. If the earnings are coming through, at least your capital gets protected. So that's sort of the first thing to keep in mind. If the earnings are not coming through and you think that your companies are expensive, then you're going to have a lot of trouble at hand. But this is something that should be true across time, when investors have to pay due accord to both earnings and valuations. But now, even more so than before, given that small and mid-cap have never been a larger portion of India's market cap than they are today, small and mid-cap valuations are at historic high levels, that it's become very imperative to make sure that you're very, very confident of the earnings coming through. And if I were to present this data on a sectoral basis for the Indian markets, you can see that in the last 1 year, we've seen a 19% increase across all sectors in PAT, but there has been a 30% increase in PE, and that's how you've had, more than a 45% return on your invested capital that has come in the FY24 year for Indian equities. The one pocket that has done exceedingly well this year has been PSUs. But if you look at PSUs, there has just been a 10% increase in PAT, but there has been a 115% increase in valuations. So it goes to show that, hey, if you have a very cheap starting point, that can give you margin of safety, or you get margin of safety with continuous earnings growth coming in, north of 15-16%. But you need to have one of those for sure. So at this point of time, when we've seen this kind of multiple expansion happen, we've seen more than 2/3 of the gain in the market coming from simply valuation gains. In some cases, it's been almost 80-90% of the gains coming from valuation gains. It's imperative to keep our focus on earnings. As we discussed last time around, if one had to really dispassionately take a look at earnings, there is one concern we should all have in mind when we're viewing this kind of growth that we've seen even in earnings last year, is that this growth has not come from revenue. So if you see the last 1 year, we've seen just a 5.5% revenue growth in BSE 500 companies, ex of financials. So the top 500 companies of India, ex of financials, because the way to view those companies is a little bit different, has led to a 18% growth in operating profits, right? So that is a massive issue, because this means that there is a challenge with the underlying volume growth that's coming in, or underlying sales growth that's coming in. And there's only so much margin you can recover, right? You've had FY23 where margins took a beating. And so naturally in FY24, as things normalizes, you were able to pass on your increased cost structures to your customers. You were able to recover those margins. But that's not something that you can continue for eternity, and margins do have a ceiling. There's a natural ceiling to margins in all businesses. So it's really interesting to now see how earnings will shape up, given that we have to be completely reliant on sales growth coming through. So when I say that you have to be very, very sure that earnings will come through in your company, I also mean that you have to be very, very sure that sales growth comes through in your company, because that is going to be a challenge. And though I'm a fund manager in India, I have 95% of my own personal net worth invested in Indian equities. And, I'll always be a bull for that. So please understand that that's my bias. But even with that, I think it's fair to recognize that if you've gotten an 18% operating profit growth on a 5% growth in revenue, that you have to be very, very picky and choosy about the companies you choose to partner with. And nothing illustrates that better than probably this chart, where in Q4, we've seen the highest ever EBITDA margins that we've seen in recent history of 19%, right? Where we've seen average to be at 15%, 15.1%. But in Q4, we've seen that number go to 19%. Naturally, from here on, the scope of any margin improvement is marginal. Sorry for the extremely bad pun, but that is true, that there is very difficult for companies from here on to show any margin expansion. Perhaps for the next 1 quarter odd, you can still see some improvement, because again, my base is a little bit lower than where I ended my Q4. But please remember that Q1 is also the quarter where 2 things have happened. One, peculiar to this year, we've had an election. Typically, work slows down in India during elections. 2, this is also the quarter that everybody gives their wage hike. So if you have a slowdown and a wage hike going out, generally it becomes difficult to sustain margins. So Q1 notwithstanding, I think one has to really be very clear that in the next 2 financial years, their company like FY25, FY26, they have a clear view on how their companies can deliver a double-digit sales growth, because that's the only way to ascertain that you will get that double-digit profit growth, and therefore you will make returns on your equity investments that are commensurate with the risk you take in making those equity investments. Coming to the sectors, last time we discussed that, on the capex front, the government has really stepped up on infrastructure creation, and corporate balance sheet is exceptionally strong. So there should be some pickup in private capex, and that should be something that we see sustaining in 25 and 26. On the private banking, we had given a call that this is the cheapest it has ever been in the last 8 years. And therefore, this is absolutely the time to buy private banks in India, especially HDFC and Kotak, with a disclaimer that we do own both those companies. So we are very biased towards them. The other thematic that we discussed was on the consumption front. How consumption, especially at the luxury end, is a more structural story with more and more people doing well in India and therefore aspiring to greater luxuries. This time around, I think there are 4 areas that we want to cover. First is private banks, which was sort of our most confident call last time around and remains to be so. I think on the fundamental side, it's very, very evident that this is one segment that is maintaining its growth rate at pre-COVID levels, if not higher, and has valuations that are cheaper than pre-COVID, right? This is probably the only place in the equity markets today where those statements both are true together. My growth is stronger than what it used to be, if not stronger, at least at par. So we have that 15% kind of growth coming in for the sector. And we have valuations that are far more reasonable than what they used to be. Over here, we have a clear preference now for private banks. Within the private banks, we prefer the stronger franchises, the larger franchises over the smaller banks. We believe that their ROEs are far more sustainable. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you remember in last Diwali, we had given this call that, it would become very difficult for foreign investors to really look at India, given for 2 reasons, right? One is foreign investors obviously view us in the global context, right? We may be biased towards our own growth, but for them, they view a growth and valuation matrix across the board. And they may not think of India as to be as lucrative as we do. They may take a view that India is already too expensive and a place like China or Brazil might be cheaper to allocate money to. The second reason is India is a very small allocation for them. So typically, the investments in India are driven by investments in the EM basket. Now, the EM basket has a very, very high proportion of their weight that comes from China. And therefore, foreigners have tended to avoid that. Foreign investors in India have tended to avoid EM basket and therefore tend to avoid India. Now, they have missed out on a rally. They will definitely would want to participate. I think the narrative that India is the strong bastion of growth in the global economy is true. Is not just a narrative, and I think it holds true. I think investors do want to participate. So any price dip in the index, I would believe that they are likely to come back to participate in this growth story. However, when foreign investors come back to India, it is first the private banks that they end up buying because that's where they have most comfort, most history, most liquidity available to buy. Perhaps later on they could look at some IT companies or something like that where corporate governance is very clean. They have a clear visibility because a lot of the demand for those companies comes from global companies that are residing in the US and Europe. But on fundamental reasons and on this technical reason, we believe that private banking has a lot of room to compound your wealth from even today's levels. And this is something that has to have a good allocation in your portfolio. The second thing we would like to call out is consumption. I know last time around we spoke of luxury consumption, but the government has since changed. Of course, the Prime Minister and the key members of the cabinet stay the same, but the nature of the government has changed. They have come in with a lesser majority this time around. And what has happened is that it has come on the back of 2 phenomena. One, a weaker rural economy, which has led to lower wage growth in rural areas, a lot of stress in the rural areas. And second is weaker employment for the outgoing batches from colleges this year around. Right? In both those cases, the government has to be more focused on rural and welfare spending. And we will, at least in our expectations, see a little bit of more announcements towards this in the upcoming budget on 22nd July. So probably for the next 1 or 2 years, we would see that this K-shaped recovery that we had seen in the consumption patterns in the economy, right, where the luxury end was doing extremely well and the staples front was really struggling to get volumes going. We will see a little bit of flattening of that K with the staples doing much better, the low value ticket items doing much better this year around. So Our expectation is that at least for FY25, two-wheelers, FMCG, any other low-ticket appliance or something like that that you can think of that does very well in semi-urban or rural areas in India should see volume growth recovery coming through. We've already seen the new government that's coming to power pass on a 5% MSP hike on top of the 7% that was given last year. We've seen the fertilizer subsidy rates go up. And this is all before the budget. We are watching, of course, what happens in the budget, but our expectation is that the government would definitely focus on these segments a lot more, and that would result in a little more distribution of money and wealth towards the rural and semi-urban section, where we would see some of these low-value ticket items see a far greater volume growth. On CapEx, we believe that government's heavy lifting on CapEx is behind us, in that we don't think it's going to drop off a cliff, but we believe that it's going to be very difficult for the government to really maintain that growth clip that we've seen for the last 2-3 years on infra spending. In the meantime, we believe that the balance sheet of corporates is pristine, it's ready to go. A lot of the PLI investments that were announced are now coming to front, especially in the pharma segment and in the electronics manufacturing segment. And so any capital goods company that has a play on the private capex side is something that we would want to focus on, rather than focusing on anything that has a play on government or infrastructure or power and capex or anything like that. Because we believe that there is a higher likelihood for earnings sustaining in these companies. Plus, we believe that there are pockets of reasonable valuations that are available. The last sector that we would like to call out today is pharmaceuticals. On pharmaceuticals, I think the most important development that has happened has been the US discussing the passing of the Biosecure Act as a law, right? What the Biosecure Act essentially states is that the federal government in the US will not engage in any form, be it by giving loans, by giving grants, by purchasing or supplying equipment to any biotechnological or pharmaceutical company that sources from China, right? And this has got to be one of the most important tailwinds for a lot of Indian contract manufacturers, because in COVID, we've already shown our mettle in supplying a disproportionate amount of volume to the world in pharmaceuticals, both on vaccines and medicines side. But we've shown the capability to execute large projects at breakneck speeds, right? We've had a company like Divi's Lab that has gotten a 450 crore advance from a customer to produce the first antiviral to combat COVID, which is Molnupiravir. And they completed the project and was ready up and running in 9 months itself. That ability has already been demonstrated. Our ability in having the largest number of API facilities that are accredited and certified by the US FDA in the world. So we have more US FDA approved facilities for API manufacturing than even US does today. That also is a significant factor that has been prompting a lot of biotech companies to look at India for their manufacturing needs. And with the Biosecure Act, it is almost a compulsion for them to now find an alternative to China. And India becomes the absolute natural beneficiary of this trend. So what has happened is, and I believe that the impact of this will be really seen after, FY27. I don't think we're going to see any impact immediately in earnings, because it takes time for people to evaluate their positions, give new contracts, for those contracts to materialize and for meaningful volumes to come through. So I do think that it will take 2-3 years of conversations and groundwork to really get this off the ground in terms of volume. But what has happened as a result is the visibility on growth is far longer now for these Indian companies than it has ever been before, which essentially allows us to be far more comfortable with the fair valuations they trade at today. So this is something that we would really think of as a decadal theme. The reason why we've not put in sort of the happy green color and it's in a dull yellow color is simply because we believe the valuations over here are fair. They're not cheap. They're definitely not expensive either, but they're definitely not cheap as well. So that is a caveat, but we believe that the visibility on earnings over here is far longer, far more structural. And we think that this sector is going to not be as cyclical as some of the other sectors are. these are the pockets where we would like to position our portfolio in. So to, just give you a quick recap, we believe that private banks, larger private banks, do very well incrementally compared to the rest of the market. We believe that staples do really well. We should be participating in the capital goods segment, but through companies that benefit from private capex, because we believe that corporates do have advantage of having a very, very lean balance sheet. And we've seen a phenomenal sort of growth in traction coming through, which should continue. And that will sort of give them confidence to go ahead and put more facility. And in pharma, we believe that the longevity of the growth is going to be far better, but the valuations today are fair. However, because the visibility is there on growth, one can take bets in this segment as well. On the whole, we would think that at least for the next 1 year, we would be more comfortable saying that Nifty 50 would tend to outperform BSE 500, which means that the larger companies in India would do better than the smaller mid-cap companies. This is because, there's been just a disproportionate amount of money that has gone into the smaller mid-cap companies, which have therefore seen a disproportionate rise in their valuations, whereas some of the large companies are still available at fair valuations. So that being the case, and the fact that foreign investors have been net sellers in India for the last 8-9 months, and if they were looking to come back to India, they're likely to pick up the large companies first, tells us that the incremental allocation, if it were to come to India, would come into those segments. And that would be our view for FY25. With that, I hope all of you find something of interest in this. And if you have any comments or anything that you would like us to cover in the next quarter's call, please do let us know in the comment section, and we will be happy to sort of address those points as well. Thank you so much.
Dear viewers, hope the video that I have done today with the fund manager Harini Dedia, if it gave you an insight about what's happening in the Indian and the global stock market, please do like this video. If you're somebody who is yet to subscribe for this channel, please do hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon right now. Thank you very much for watching this episode on NRI Money Clinic. Do not forget to share these videos with your near and dear ones, friends and relatives, and on all the WhatsApp groups on which you are connected with. I shall be back with you with yet another episode of Expert Speaks next Tuesday. Till then, stay safe. Jai Hind.
Press the bell icon for more details and subscribe our channel.